Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at patreon.com/inspired disorder.
What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.
This is my top 5 movies from the Paranormal Activity franchise. I watched all 6 of the movies. There is a 7th movie that should be coming out, I believe, this month. There's another one coming out soon. 2021, Next of Kin. But I watched the 6 that are currently out, and I ranked them. And I had opinion on this franchise, which is an interesting franchise. It's like a haunted house movie mixed with found footage, surveillance footage primarily is a big aspect of this, which is a premise and a format that gets old. But there is a through line. There's an overarching story, and we'll get into it as I talk about these movies. But yeah, some are definitely better than others, and some are just not good at all. But let's start off with my number 5. This is my 5th least favorite. 5th favorite? This is my number 5. Paranormal Activity 4. This one is, so the first 3 are pretty consistent. As far as like story, there's kind of the story about these sisters or whatever. This one is like kind of an offshoot. It's like this just different family. Still, like every other or most of the franchise, the majority of these films, the houses involved are large houses in Southern California, San Diego area, a lot of them. Not all of them. There's one that takes place in an apartment. But they're all like these wealthy white people, basically, in very large houses, multi-million-dollar houses. So it does get a bit fatiguing seeing this like tormented rich white people. And they're not necessarily rich, but they are not really like worried about money, let's say. And this one is kind of like an offshoot. It's the mom. So after the events of the third one, or maybe it's the second one actually, the woman kidnapped a kid, and there's this whole thing where like these kids are going to be possessed or whatever. Is kind of this story. And they move in next door. So this kid ends up coming over to the house that is going to be the main haunted house. And the fact that they moved in across the street means that the things there, it's also the first one to have like cell phone camera footage and using computers as cameras, whereas the other ones are using actual camcorders or VHS camcorders. So I enjoyed that it, kind of changed up a little bit with technology. I enjoyed the lead character. She's okay. The scares were not that good. There was like this, the Xbox Kinect was big at the time, and they had this scene where you can, like, if you looked through like the night vision on a camcorder, you would see all the little dots that the Kinect would shoot out for measurement to like map your room, which adds to like some kind of fun aspects to it, where you're, a lot of this movie is them recording footage, like surveillance footage, and then characters looking through that surveillance footage, seeing things that happen. That's a lot of what this whole franchise is. The scares are whatever in this one, but, it's my number 5. It's not the worst out of the ones I've seen, but it gets on the list. At least, the lead character was fun. The story, the reason why things were happening were like the kind of the background plot that ties all these movies together is pretty flimsy. So they break a lot of rules, it seems like, their own rules, depending on what they feel like doing. But yeah, coming in at number 5 is Paranormal Activity 4. Which is, if I was going to recommend, I wouldn't necessarily recommend people watch. There's not, let me just say, there's not 5 good movies in this franchise. But that's, out of the ones I didn't like, that one I liked more than the other. Moving on to number 4 is Paranormal Activity 3. This one does a lot to kind of fill in the backstory and describe and explain why these houses are being haunted, why specific people are being targeted, and it's this backstory. This one takes place in 1988, with the parents of Katie, I think it is, who is one of the 2 leads from the first. Yeah, Katie and Christy are 2 sisters. The first movie in the franchise is Katie and her husband. The second in this franchise is we see the sister. It is the sister's family. And this one, the third, is going back in time to 1988 and showing the mom and the father. The dad is a wedding videographer. That's what explains his access to VHS recording in early days, and having cameras and all of that editing equipment, all that kind of stuff. It kind of explains it. It's interesting. This movie would have been a lot better if they had made the VHS footage look more like VHS footage, like have the appropriate aspect ratio, have the appropriate distortion in the video. That would have made it look so much better as a period piece, and I would have loved to see this franchise, like the themes of this franchise and the tropes of this franchise, be portrayed in a more authentic 1988 VHS quality of a style. And that would have keep everything the way it is, but just be true to that technology and what it looked like and actually go there. And it would have been great. It would have been so good. Despite how crazy it is that they would do this. But because he's like recording, he's like, oh, I can do 6 hours, so I just have to change the tapes once, and that's half a day. And then he spends the rest of the day reviewing those 12 hours of footage, which is kind of crazy. But whatever. It's interesting. It's interesting. Also a big house. He's like, apparently the mom comes from money. That's the whole thing with the backstory, is that somebody down early in their family line used witchcraft to make a bargain with a demon for wealth and prosperity. So that kind of, I guess, explains why everybody has money in this family. And they all have these big houses. That's all I could think of while watching this to explain why every movie, except for one, is rich white people in a big house. But anyway, so this is the origin story where you're seeing the 2 sisters being possessed, and you know, it was okay. It was okay. I enjoyed that it kind of rounded out that kind of backstory. It was, as compared to the first 2 movies that just mildly touched on the explanation for everything, while this one did a lot to kind of explain a lot of it. But it's still confusing because the movies kind of changed their rules throughout. But yeah, coming in at number 4 is Paranormal Activity 3. A little over 4 years ago, I started The Many Faces. It's an ongoing series of abstract ink portraits. Each piece is improvised. Each piece is released daily. Start collecting now. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com/TMF. That stands for The Many Faces. And save yourself 25% when you use coupon code RTS. That stands for The Ray Taylor Show, because that's what you're listening to, and I love you. So I want you to save 25% when you use that coupon code. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com/TMF and use coupon code RTS to save 25% when you start collecting one of over 1,600 original ink paintings. By myself, I made them. Support me. I love you. Back to the show. Moving on to my number 3 favorite Paranormal Activity film. Coming in at number 3 is the first Paranormal Activity, the OG Paranormal Activity. The only one I had seen before buying this entire franchise and watching this entire franchise. It was the only one of them that I had seen. And it was good. It's a solid, like, you want to talk about a clearly low budget movie using a premise, right, in the storytelling that would allow for low budget, but also terrifying when you saw that. I mean, it was like found footage is usually somebody holding a camera, which is what this franchise eventually becomes. It becomes a lot more of the first person cameraman point of view versus a lot of this first movie is surveillance footage. I mean, there's definitely stuff where the main character is holding the camera and talking to his wife. Oren Peli is the writer and director of this first one. But Micah is a guy who, gets a camera, a fancy camera, because crazy things have been happening. Like doors have been opening and just weird things have been happening. So he gets a camera because he wants to see what's making these things happen. And as going through that footage, you start seeing the wife, Katie, doing crazy things. And you're seeing, clearly there's something there. It's terrifying. It's a really great movie, the first one. I mean, it's got really great scares. It's doing a lot of it. Over time, like these movies, it just gets exhausting watching people watch footage. But this first one was so fresh and so new that it was really cool to see kind of the birth of this idea. And also kind of giving it a little bit of a backstory, just touching on the explanation in a little way. Just enough to kind of give it some kind of grounding, or I don't know, some kind of through line that you could attach a bunch of other movies to in a franchise. But yeah, Paranormal Activity 1 was pretty good. So it's my number 3. I liked it. I actually liked this one. Paranormal Activity 3 bothered me a lot. That's why it's my number 4. It was okay. That's why it's my number 4 and not my number 5. But Paranormal Activity I actually like. These top 3 movies I actually like. But this one is I like the least. But it's the first one. Like in the second one, which I'll get to. Well, anyway, the first one, it's in the ranking, it comes in at number 3 because it was just the beginning of the idea. Kind of like The Purge. How the first one, independent, simple idea, interesting premise, but the other ones were able to expand on that premise a lot more and flesh it out a lot more. So they came in a little bit higher. So anyway, number 3 is Paranormal Activity 1. My number 2 pick is also the number 2 in the franchise. It is Paranormal Activity 2. This one follows the sister. This one follows Christy. Oh, at the end of the first one, Micah dies. Which the first 3 movies are great as a trilogy of films because they are all related. This Paranormal Activity 2 takes place just before the first movie and then a little bit after the first movie. But Paranormal Activity 2 is a bigger family. We have Katie, the sister of Christy. She's got a husband. They have an adopted daughter or like a step daughter. And then you have a newborn and a dog and a bigger house. So all of those things, it just kind of just blows up the premise of the first one with a larger family, more people, but still tied to it because you see that first character come over and you see that both of these sisters have an issue, have had an issue in the past where like crazy things happen to their family. And now they're happening again to their family, and they're kind of in denial of everything because clearly in 3 you see them being indoctrinated, and it's kind of crazy. But in the second one, I think it just does all the things of the first one and just does them a little bit better. It adds a little bit more to that backstory. You're seeing the footage this time instead of the husband getting a camcorder. By the way, this family is what inspired Micah to get his camera for the first movie, where this family just got indoor surveillance cameras, which you can get, are everywhere. I would imagine this movie in some ways inspired companies to do that, to come up with those things. But so a lot of that footage is it just makes it so much easier. Instead of having to set up a camera on a tripod in their bedroom, which is the majority of Paranormal Activity, you get security cam footage from all the different aspects of the rooms, different perspectives from different rooms, different angles. It's great. It's great. It's a really good one. Not my favorite, but it's good. People out of the ones that are on the list right now, they all follow that same kind of format. White people with money in big houses. Got some great scares in the second one. I think it's got the best scares. And it really just does everything the first one does and turns it up a notch. So that's why Paranormal Activity 2 is my second favorite in this franchise. But my number one, my favorite Paranormal Activity film is Paranormal Activity 5, The Marked Ones. And I love this one because it's by far the most different from every other film in this franchise. Even Paranormal Activity 6 has a wealthy family. It's basically the same, except for they're watching all of the footage from Paranormal Activity 3, which I didn't like. And then it's like a way big, it's showing like they have like ghosts visualized. Horrible. The worst. Which I shouldn't have even been talking about 6, because I'm talking about 5. Because Paranormal Activity 5, The Marked Ones, is my favorite. I've been wanting one of these movies in this franchise to be an apartment. This gives me that. This is I forget where, but this is like LA. Apartment. Hispanic family. There's a downstairs neighbor. This changes the movie quite a bit, and it fleshes out, I think, in a much more interesting way, the backstory. That like people did this seance, these kids are doing this seance, like they have a downstairs neighbor that's crazy, quote unquote. She's like a witch, maybe. A lot of, I mean, it fits so well. The backstory fits so much better with Hispanic characters in some ways, because there's like Santeria and stuff like that. There's like a lot of different cultures have like their own version of witchcraft, I guess. But I don't know. I love this. I loved all of the characters in this one. Like, it's out of all of the Paranormal Activity movies. Like, I don't care about those families getting tortured. I don't care. Like, oh, I'm sorry, life is hard living in this giant mansion. Oh, I'm sorry. Where this one, it's like I loved all these characters. A little bit more actiony. Super terrifying moments in this one as well. It has this great thing. So they added this aspect to it where you can time travel. And the end of this movie, these characters he's running away. Something's attacked, like people are getting possessed. The first-born males are getting possessed, and they're coming after. It's almost like zombies, but instead of being bitten, it's being possessed. And like when you turn 18, you can display. If you're not when you're a child, then it happens again when I don't know. I just love this movie. It's so much fun. It probably breaks the most rules. I love that it's in an apartment. It's in like LA. It's dealing with like normal, like what I would consider more normal people. It's not just at a house. I mean, this one does a lot of the first-person cameraman footage. I don't think there's really much surveillance footage at all. But it's so much fun. The characters are great. The stories, they make the story interesting. And that time travel aspect, one of the guys, while he's running away, goes through a door and ends up in the first house of the first movie and witnesses Katie kill Micah, which is like, what? When that happened in this movie, I'm like, no way. Like how they tied that in. And just if somebody would take that aspect, that time travel aspect, to somehow loop all these movies together, oh, it would just be amazing to watch. But they didn't do it because in 6 was like horrible. It's like whoever made 6 hadn't watched any of the other Paranormal Activities. But yeah, Paranormal Activity 5, the marked ones, is by far my favorite, even though it's the least, it fits in the least with all the other ones. I would say the Paranormal Activity franchise should be 1, 2, and 3, as that's it. End the franchise with those 3. It's a nice little wrap up with the third one. But Paranormal Activity 5 could just be another movie, another horror possession movie, found footage movie. But I enjoyed it the most. Paranormal Activity 5, the marked ones, I highly recommend that one to check out. You don't have to see any of the other ones at all. You don't. They play around with the rules of the franchise so much, it's not worth it. Especially 6. 6 like regurgitates so much of Paranormal Activity 3. It's ridiculous. Most of Paranormal Activity 5, or 6, which did not make this list, which is titled Paranormal Activity 6. There's Paranormal Activity. No, that's the marked ones. What is it called? The Ghost Dimension is horrible. Most of that movie is watching footage from Paranormal Activity 3. And then instead of invisible entities haunting a house, they digitally create these like smoky creatures. Out of the whole franchise, we don't have any effects like that. We have no need to visualize what these demons look like. But they decided to do it. It was just horrible. It was bad. By far the worst. So yeah, let me do my list one more time. My top 5 movies from the Paranormal Activity franchise. Number 5 is Paranormal Activity 4. Number 4 is Paranormal Activity 3. My number 3 is Paranormal Activity. My number 2 is Paranormal Activity 2. My favorite and number 1 Paranormal Activity movie is Paranormal Activity 5, the marked ones. Highly recommend checking that out. It's a really fun horror movie on its own. And you can check out all of my top 5 lists over on Letterboxd. I started a Letterboxd page, which I don't know the name of it, but maybe in the description for this I'll put a link. Eventually I'll be putting links up. But if you're on Letterboxd and if you just search top 5 Paranormal Activity franchise and you see me, the Ray Taylor, actually I think it's Ray Taylor Show is my account. So go follow that if you want to see all of the rankings from all the other movies that I've ranked on this show. But yeah, that's it. Overall, Paranormal Activity, not a great franchise. Couple good movies, but not like it gets tiring watching surveillance footage looking for something to move. Like it can get very boring, especially in a marathon format. These are not good movies to watch back to back. Not at all. But the one that was by far the most fun, Paranormal Activity 5. New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on IGTV, YouTube, and everywhere else podcasts are found. Binge the full week ad-free over at patreon.com/Inspired Disorder. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. And follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out.